Okay, I think, oh, it's going. Okay. All right, hello everyone. This is Jared Vaughn, and with me over this way, but depending on how you're looking at it, I'm not sure, but
Yes.
it is Shoshanna
Shoshanna
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah. Yes.
And if you're not familiar with Shoshanna, or maybe even myself, we will tell you what we're doing. Um, my company is Time Honor Productions, and Shoshanna is a part of our Time Honor Productions team, our family. She's a partner in time, and we whenever we do events, we usually do cosplay and even group cosplay. So if you see me around as Marty McFly, you might even see her as Jennifer, along with Doc Brown and us. We've been the Addis family. She was Wednesday to my Gomez, and we've so we have a lot of fun there. And unfortunately, we haven't got to do anything in a year because of all
Yes.
this all this COVID stuff has really put a damper on everything. But we are still plugging away, and we're still writing, and we're still doing stuff. And here we are at Epic, and hope everybody's having a good time. And we're going to talk about a couple of projects that we've worked on. And first and foremost, Free Time Tales.
Yes.
That cover might be a little harder to see because it's just a lot of black and white, but you can see both of us on the cover. And originally it was intended to have a few others, but I never did get their pictures turned in to include the two. But it's made to look like a newspaper. $10, February 30th, 2018. All the news we feel like telling you, and it's a collection of
It
short
didn't feel like
stories.
telling you anything
We
else.
didn't. We didn't really
Yeah,
didn't tell
no.
them much, but, uh, but it is a book of short stories. 10 different writers, 14 stories. Some writers had 2 stories, and we each had one of those stories in it. And we will talk to you about the stories that we wrote and some of our experiences since then and other things we've got in the works. Right now, I want to go ahead and give a little credit to our other writers. Not everybody could be here, and we tried and just it was kind of short notice and couldn't really get everybody. But hopefully, we can do something else like this again, or especially in person, get the crew together and do something to say, hey, we've got books. Um, I do want to mention very quickly, I do have an event next week in Wichita, my first and last event of the year in Wichita. Very strange year. It would have been the first, it would have been the last of many. But on the 12th, we do have from 10 to 4 an event called Meet the Authors, and it'll be at a place called At the Market in Wichita. And I and several other good writers will be there, and we'll talk about books, and maybe you can come out and see us if you're in the area. But for now, we will talk about Free Time Tales, and we've had one. I'll just go through the table of contents. First story was called The Ocean by H. Kelvin Mays, and that was they're all short stories, and these were all just area writers. This was someone a lot older than me, and I met him at a writing workshop that we did, and he came and said he just recently started writing and got the bug. And it was really cool because I saw how different it can be for everybody. We have someone like Shauna who is still young and just getting started, and then we have somebody a lot older who's just getting started, and then some of us who've been writing off and on forever and finally getting something in print. So there's a wide variety, and it just goes to show how much people can. When you're doing anything creative, you can jump in there at any time and you can still do things. But he had a very good true story of his time out on the ocean in Alaska, and they ran into a storm and had a little trouble, but made it out all right. But it's very well written. I hope to see more from him. H. Kelvin Mays, The Ocean, and then we had The Betrayal by Driddy Sriram, and she also wrote, and I'm trying to find where it was. I don't have everything in order by the authors, just by the page number. Safe. She had 2 stories, very well written, uh, but The Betrayal was going into more of a kind of a fairy tale setting there, and Safe was very much surprising me because she's and she was going to be here with us. Dritty and Deeksha, sisters, they were going to be here, and somehow it didn't work out. But again, young girls. This book was in 2018, and I think, if I remember right, Dritty was 13 or 14, and Deeksha is a couple of years younger than that. But I met them also at a library con they did in Heston, and I had the flyers talking about putting this project together. And Deeksha saw it, and she goes and handed it to Dritty real quick, because they're like, we can get our stories out there. And I saw Dritty walking around with this book, because it was at a library and they were still, people could check out book that thick. And it's a really young girl. The book is thick as an encyclopedia, and I was like, this has got to be a smart girl. So she wrote the story safe. Surprisingly, but it didn't shock me, because it actually got into some serious subject matter for somebody that young, and very, very well done. And then Deeksha, as we mentioned, she wrote Dreams, which is very much a fantasy story, just the way dreams are. It just describes going from one thing to another, and you don't know what's going to happen next. So that was interesting. And the other one here, I'm trying to find it, was My Vision Is Not the Greatest Anyway. Better Now Than Never. There it is. But she wrote Better Now Than Never, and that was more contemporary setting, little adventure with some teenagers. And but it's really great seeing these young kids come out with new things. I Was a Paper Boy by James Robb, someone else older, and I think, if I remember right, and he was at the writing workshop we did in Clearwater.
Yeah.
I think he used to write a column for the newspaper, or he did something like that a long time ago. But so he's somebody who's had some experience with writing, but I think it was probably the first time he was in a book. And that's exactly why I was doing it. I was just trying to give people a chance to get their work out there, when they might otherwise not have that chance, or know where to go to do it, or anything like that. Like trying to do something like that. And that was a good, another true story, autobiographical. And I really loved reading. I like nostalgic stuff, as you can see in my book, Longest Time. But it talks about how he was a paper boy when he was a kid, and talking about collecting baseball cards and stuff like that I could relate to. Drew Jansen had two stories for us, Time's Wages, and where was the other one? Time's Wages, and I can remember Ancient Powers. Ancient Powers is a fantasy story, very well written, a little bit longer than some of the other ones, but it was about these gods that are at war with each other, and this big dragon, and very exciting action adventure story, very well written. Time's Wages, as a knight who goes back in time, and that was a whole different kind of time travel story for me. And I like time travel stuff, so that was right up my alley. Then we had Indy Rose with Fresh Start and Demon Feast. She had two very short stories, but Fresh Start was getting into psychological things, someone looking in the mirror, and all the things that they may see that may not really be there, and very interesting stuff there. And Demon Feast, a little bit more of a spooky story, but also tongue-in-cheek dark humor. And Indy, you might see sometimes with us at cons, will show up. And last year we did a Bill and Ted and Rufus cosplay, and Indy was Bill. Ray, who we'll talk about after a while, Ray originally was going to be Bill and then couldn't make it, and so I asked Indy, and enthusiastically agreed. And so we've done some things with Indy, and helped out at my table at times. And we had The Boy with Mismatched Eyes by Grace Myers, and we know Grace pretty well.
Yes.
And that was a good story. I think it's the first in the series to writing a lot of stories about these characters in kind of a future world, steampunk style. And something interesting about this is, somewhat a sci-fi story, but it's really, you don't even get that sense of it as much, because you're reading about the characters, and it's more about their relationships and stuff, and the kind of thing, the way I like to write. And I think that one other writer besides us was Tevka Timido, and we know him very well. Is it okay to say how we know him?
He is my cousin.
There you go. So I didn't know if we wanted everyone to know that or not. I don't know if you want to claim him,
Hey.
but we we tried to have him here, but it just didn't work out, even with
Uh,
cousins. But it was a short notice, but he wrote a good fantasy story about people with superpowers, and it was even billed there as the first chapter in a book. So I haven't talked to him lately to see how far along he is with that book, but I'm looking forward to seeing that and publishing that with Time Honor Productions. So then we just had the two of us left to talk about, and Shoshanna, yeah, so excited,
oh
so
no, I'm
excited to
so
get you.
excited.
Uh, your story was called
In the shadow of Kansas.
"In the Shadow of a Man in Kansas," and this is very interesting because I've read one other story from her before this, and then I read this story, and it's completely different style, different genre. It's like a Western genre here, and it proved to me once again how good of a writer she is, that she can do other things.
Aww.
And so I really like that, and I've read another story since then, again completely different, different style, different everything, but still good writing. So that's a good reason why we have Shoshana here, or Shauna for short, or
Or show.
or just short. Maybe I won't get into all the other nicknames, but in case you can't
There's
tell,
too many.
we do know each other pretty well. We've worked on some of these projects, but we're good friends too, and like family. So we're we do pick on each other and stuff too. But
Always.
so, but to tell us about your story, what that's about.
So I wrote a research paper on Jesse Chisholm, and I decided that I wanted to turn it into a bit of a story. So I decided to write from the view of one of the workers looking at Jesse Chisholm and his lifetime and what all he was doing. I decided I wanted to put a more personal twist on it. Because you will read a history book or anything else, and it won't give you a real personal sense to it. Yes, you get the history, but Jesse Chisholm was a person, a human being. I wanted
Exactly.
I wanted to view him in that form, and thus I came up with the idea of having a little short story about a boy who was working at a shop and went out with him and helped him get the cattle along the Chisholm Trail. And yeah.
See, and that's the way I like to write. It's where we're trying to draw people in by the characters, because the way I've always said, and we've talked a lot about this, you can have all the razzle dazzle in the world. You have something like Star Wars, and that is almost unfair to even mention because it's kind of in its own category. It's so big, but it's because you can just draw in people with the effects of that. But to me, I've always looked at, you take The Empire Strikes Back, and that's when we really started. It was already there, but we really start to see the characters, and that drawn into the characters more of a bigger story. When, spoiler alert for something that came out 40 years ago, if you haven't seen it, it's not my fault. But at the end of the movie, when Darth Vader tells Luke, "I am your father," and I can just imagine everybody in the theater at that time going, because now this has become a bigger story about the characters. So it's like, even something big like that, what keeps people coming back to it, to something like Star Wars, isn't just the effects. And like I said, it can with just effects when it's Star Wars, but a lot of things, if it's big on all that, because guess what happened after Star Wars? Well, there were imitators, of course. It became the number one movie ever. So then you have all these other imitators, but where did they go? It was just a flash in the pan because they didn't capture the character stuff properly, or maybe just had a low budget or whatever. But that's what I always try to tell writers: make us care about the characters, and I think that's what you did here. And something I've noticed with the other stories you've written, it comes first person, and I've noticed that. Whether this or the other stories I've written, it's always coming from the first person, and that's tricky to write. And a lot of people even say not to do it that way because it can be so hard. Um, and the only reason why I don't do it like that is just because the nature of my story, and how the perspective can shift to some other character, it wouldn't work. But with yours so far, the ones you've written, it has worked. And something I was going to point out that, well, I was going to ask you about this for those who don't know, but we did have an event last year at ICT Wichita, and I'm going to tell you something else about that too you might not know. But when we did that, we were the Adams family, so we had Wednesday, Gomez, Morticia, and Lurch and Pugsley, Thane.
Yes.
We were there, and that was a lot of fun. But we had a special visitor when we did that. You want to tell us about that?
Isn't it? He called out my name the first time I passed by. I don't even remember what I was doing exactly. I was looking for someone, I believe. I think it might have been you, maybe.
Probably.
And he called out my name. He goes, "Cousin Wednesday." I'm like, I didn't even notice. I didn't know. I didn't hear him. Everyone was looking around. And the second time I came by, still looking for someone. He called out my name again, and I stopped this time. And he allowed us to get pictures with him, and we had a small chat. It was fun.
And that was Cousin It. That was Cousin It, Felix Silla, who played It on the old series, and we got a picture with him. He even got a picture on his own phone. He liked it so much. And just to show you how nice of a guy he is, I tried to pay him, as you know, he takes money for these things. He wouldn't take it. He wouldn't even take the money for it. He's just a really nice guy. He really loved our costumes. Talked with us for a while, but we had another visitor. You weren't there at the table at the time, but when we have these events, I have a big banner of myself and a big banner of Shauna. And someone came up and saw that banner of Shauna and knew who you were. And I thought, well, I don't know if it's because of your archery, because kind of going places with that. I don't know if it's from right, or whatever it is. But somebody, you want to tell us about that?
His name is Patrick Murphy, and he is Jesse Chisholm's great grandson. I don't remember how many great.
But he is related to Jesse Chisholm. Yeah. And when you came back by the table, then you got to see each other, and he wanted to buy the book. Like, hey, that's about you. You can just have it. It's about your family. But that was we got a picture of it. You can find it on Facebook. But it was a really nice moment. Did that feel like it was like meeting a hero, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it's
almost like meeting family too at the same time. I mean, I've been doing a research paper for a while, and then writing the story. And then I met him actually at a fall festival, I believe, Clearwater's Fall Festival, a few years before then. And so I had already known him for a little bit when I started writing it. So,
yeah, so he's got to watch you progress in become this writer and write this story. I thought it was pretty cool. One tidbit I don't think I told you about at the time. I didn't notice until later, and I was going to tell you now. And I'm not sure if it was at this event or one later, but because it was at Century 2 and we do a lot of things there. But I remember later on sitting in the parking lot, and J.S. Spencer, another partner in time, who was Lurch at this one. You see him as Doc Brown and everything, and good friend. We're sitting there trying to decide where we're going to go eat, and I get to looking at the street, and you know what it says on the sign right there on the road where we were at Century 2?
what?
Chisholm Trail.
Yeah.
We were on the Chisholm Trail already. We didn't even realize it. Isn't that funny?
Yes, it is.
So
Hey,
But
all comes around.
you never know, and that's one of the things I like to tell people. Uh, a lot of people are nervous about starting a new career writing or with artwork or music or pretty much anything in life. It doesn't even have to be, creative arts. It can be anything. It can be daunting, especially when you realize how much work is going to be needed to go into it. It might even be schooling. Nothing is going to just fall in your lap. So once you start, I'm not saying no one will help you at all, but a lot of times you have to put a lot of work into it. So once you start doing it, that's when you start to get that reward and feel like, I know when I started writing my book, and I'd written things for years, but I never wrote a book. It was just little stories here and there, or songs, or just funny things or whatever. Um, but I started writing it, and it started to get the rhythm of it and how different it is to write a book than other things. And I felt like this is what I was meant to do. I feel like
Yeah.
this is my place. Did you get that feeling when you write?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost freeing in a sense because you're free to write whatever comes to your mind. Your imagination is your playground.
Yeah. And then you might get an opportunity to have that imagination shared with other people. How does that feel to have your work in print?
Daunting almost. It's sometimes I can't even believe that it is already published.
Yeah, and especially since you're so young. Um, this was, well, you had to have been 13 or 14 at the time you wrote that.
Think, yeah.
And we'll talk about. I'm not sure how much time we got left, but I want to talk just a little bit about how we met and how that led to doing this book and another book that we got going on. And are you seeing me okay? Is it messing up for you? Because I'm getting that the weird thing I was telling you about with the laptop. It was doing that just now.
Good.
But I had we had an event at her library,
Yes.
little town in Kansas I'd never even heard of, but I signed up for this thing, and Jay Bird Wells. We know Jay. Um, I'm going to point, and a lot of people know her from her writing, her cosplay, her radio program, a lot of things that she does, and you can't miss Jay. She does make her presence known, but she's a good friend of ours, and but she's the one who got me to go there, and I don't even know how it started with her, but so here I am there, not knowing anybody else, but knew that she was going to be there. Joel got sick that day, so he couldn't even be there. He woke up sick, and Jay got sick the night before, so she couldn't make it. So I'm there, not knowing anybody, and because she wasn't there, she couldn't be a judge for the short story contest. Now I knew that they were doing one, but I didn't know anything much more than that. And but because she wasn't there, then they asked if I would fill in for her. So I did, and I wrote. I wrote your story. I read.
Oh.
I read your. Now the truth comes out. No, I'm just kidding. But I read a story that she wrote and a couple of other ones, and this is before we even met. So we met, later in the day, and I could tell with someone young who wrote it, but not by it, not being good enough or anything like that, but just because of just the voice that I was reading, and I thought this the word that kept coming to my mind was delightful. It was a delightful story. And what was the name of that story?
Tobias's Travels.
Tobias's Travels. And here it was from the first person perspective of this bird. Why don't you tell us what the story is about? I feel like I'm taking up too much of that.
Fine. So the story Tobias's Travels is about he's an older pet that I used to have, pet Robin. We found him when he fell out of his nest, and we kept him in the house for a while, fed him out of buckets, and we had worms, and we put a bunch of dirt in there, and we were trying to get him, teaching him to actually go and try and look for the worms. He never did it. He'd sit on my shoulder, and while I was doing homework, stuff like that. But off topic.
No.
Well, story about how I knew how I found him, and I had wrote about the beginning part when I found him, and the story leading up to what I was really trying to get to was my thoughts of what happened after I let him go. I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't forever.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So she wrote the story. It starts out. It's a true story about having this pet and then needing to let him go, and then imagining what happens after that as he's flying south. So what's really interesting is seeing where he's seeing a lot of things for the first time because he hasn't been out in the wild. He's been a pet. So he describes things that he sees that he's never seen before, and then a kid could read this and try to think what is that, and it's a deer or it's a fish jumping out of the water, and those kind of things. I thought was really clever the way it was written.
Thank you.
So we talked about this, and she was 13 at the time, and I told her, and you might remember that I said I wasn't writing like that when I was 13. I mean, my stuff was terrible. This was really good, and it stuck with me after that. I would come back and I'd think about that and realize, well, she shows Tobias go through all these ups and downs, these challenges he has to overcome. He meets friends along the way, and then there's this threat, and there's the different things on this adventure to get where he's going. And I said, she got this right. Like, how could she, right out of the gate? She's 13 years old, and she writes a story and does everything that we tell writers how to write a story. She's already doing it, and I thought, it just boom, this would be a great kids book. And so I talked to her mom. So we had to get permission. We became friends, and she was fine once I figured out how to go about making this happen. And then she talked to you, and we talked, and then before you know it, there was a contract. So we have Tobias Travels, a kids book on the way, and it's been a long journey because
Yes, it has.
we it's not easy to do a kids book. It just isn't, because you have to have so many illustrations, and it takes time. You want to get it right. We've had one artist who we love, and it just didn't work out. Too much was going on, and also a teenager, and it was like, this would be the first kids book written and illustrated by two teenagers. But now we have someone else who's still working on it and is come 75 to 80% along the way, and so it's still coming. We've had some setbacks, unfortunately, because of health, and there's just some things we can't control, but it is still coming. Hopefully will arrive next year. But this is what the cover will look like. It'll be smaller than this, but Tobias Travels. Ray Gordon is our illustrious illustrator, and you'll see some things from her also during Epic. I'm going to get that even closer. I don't know if I get, but beautiful work from a very talented, very nice person, and we are so happy to have Ray. And it's been quite a journey, but we're getting there. And it's it, sorry, I get a little dry. But Tobias Travels is coming. There are also plans to even do sequels. And can we say it? Should we say it?
We won.
Should we tell them? We might have a crossover someday where Tobias might be in the same world as Charlie and Lisa. So we do plan on doing that at some point, have a kids book with us working together. So that's very exciting. The term I've started using is the longest time verse. I didn't talk about my story in this book, so I'll mention very quickly, but Invisible Touch was my story, and it was always intended to be a part of this bigger picture of the longest time verse. The main character, Kiri, does appear in my next book that I'm going to start writing with my third book. She is mentioned a couple of times in Another Time, the new book. But it is there is a bigger picture, and now Tobias will be a part of it as well. And it's a lot of fun. It's so much fun doing this. Uh, so we have so many ideas and so little time to do everything, but we do have the ideas, and we are working on things that I think everybody's really going to love. And this is going to be a great kids book. Uh, we we've had, like I said, there's been another story you've written since then that we worked together and edited. I didn't even need much because you know what you're doing with it. You know, just put a comma in here. You know, whatever, just simple little things. But Shoshanna is definitely very gifted as a writer, and I don't just say that to be nice, but I've seen it all along. And it's people like her that I want to help and I want to see succeed, not only because of her talent, but just because of her heart. And is just someone I know is a special person, and we need more of that kind of light in this world, especially the way things have been going this year. It's become very dark, and we need people like this who are shining a light and writing positive stories. And the world needs that a lot. And I think a lot of people are realizing that now. So that's why we keep doing what we're doing. Time Honored Productions. Um, and it feels like I'm leaving out a lot of things. And I know we're going to have to wrap it up here pretty soon. But I do want to ask you a big question. Oh, a couple of questions. I almost forgot to ask. Have you been writing anything lately?
Well, I have been working and trying. I will not say anything yet because spoilers. But yes, I've been writing some short stories.
All right. Well, it's a good thing you mentioned that, um, because I have a big question. I told you there'd be a surprise. So we did Free Time Tales just a couple years ago, and I'm having that little issue here. Okay, you can see me all right?
Yes.
Here's the $1,000,000 question, or at least $100.
Ready.
Okay. Are you ready to do it again?
Yes.
It sounds like you're already working on material for it. And
Yes.
everybody watching this, I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. I knew she was probably writing because that's what writers do. But I have been getting asked by other writers, when are you going to do another one? Because they want, so we're going to see the same people, hopefully. Definitely we'll see Shauna and myself, and hopefully see, or I know we'll see some others who weren't even in it the first time around, and introduce more writers into our little world here. But yeah, the plan is to do another one, have that next year. Once I get all these events out of the way, I'm going to sit down and really make a plan exactly of when, specific dates, and figure all that out. But so look for some announcements pretty soon. In the meantime, Free Time Tales is available on timehonoredproductions.com and also on Amazon. You can get it as an ebook, not just in print, so whichever way you prefer. This is the new and improved version. I hate to admit it, but I did find some errors, and so I've fixed it so that it is better, and it works as an ebook. You can click on chapters, and it'll take you. Well, I say chapters, the same would be another one. You can click right to each story, so if you're looking just for her story and you have the ebook, it'll take you right to it, and it's all set up that way. Same thing with the chapters in the other books. The Longest Time, just quick little plug, Another Time. Those are my solo novels. And timehonoredproductions.com, Amazon Smashwords for ebook as well. Those are all available, and a lot more still to come. And our world is, we're pretty creative people, and we have a lot more coming. We'll see some other things also from J.S. Spencer. He's been waiting in the wings. Like, well, let's get this kid's book out of the way first before we do his. But he does have one on the way too. But it's like, let's get this one done, and he's been waiting patiently. But we're going to get the ball rolling on that one too, as soon as we can. But I would open it up to questions, but this isn't really live for everybody to do it. But you can also add something in the comments, and we can get back to you on that. And so much more we could talk about. We were talking before we did this, and we're talkers. We we get into all kinds of things. But thank you everybody for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this. And thank you, Shoshanna Aaliyah, for being here. And
thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you for being here and sharing your talent and and your big heart and that beautiful smile that we've missed. And hopefully we can get everything back to normal where we can have more events and get to see everybody again. And I think everybody's really hungry for that right now. So I think that's one of the reasons why Epic is working so well, because it's something we've missed. We miss seeing our friends. It's not just about going out and buying stuff, but we miss seeing our friends. So hopefully everybody will have a good time here with Epic. And if you're in Wichita area next week, next Saturday from 10 to 4, I'll be at Meet the Authors. And there's an event on Facebook. You can check it out some more and see all the great people who will be there. So in the meantime, thank you, Shauna. Thank you for watching. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.